Radio Imanzi ijana na gatanu igice kimwe FM. Twese hamwe birashoboka.
We got you updated. This is Radio Imanzi News in English.
Good evening. Thank you for tuning in. This is Radio Imanzi 105.1, broadcasting from Kigali. Here are the news in English, brought to you by Alvin Umngadi. The headlines. President Paul Kagame received Barbados Prime Minister in Rwanda. President Paul Kagame appoints a new Minister of Local Government. Rwanda's inflation increased by 20.1%. Kenya will spend $37 million on sending forces to Congo. His Excellency Vladimir Putin will now be attending the G20 summit in person. We'll be back with news and details. Welcome back. These are news and details. President Paul Kagame receives Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley in Rwanda, who is in Rwanda for a 3-day official visit aimed at further solidifying bilateral ties between the two nations. He was met by President Paul Kagame this afternoon. Recently, both nations unveiled intentions to improve their bilateral ties in a variety of sectors, including trade and investment, sports, tourism, and agriculture. The two heads of state will meet one-on-one and then have bilateral discussions with representatives from both delegations. They are then anticipated to address the media. Prime Minister Mottley Mia Amor will then visit the Kigali Genocide Memorial, where she will lay a wreath in honor of the over 1 million lives lost during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. His Excellency Paul Kagame will receive Prime Minister Mottley and her delegation for a cocktail event later in the evening. Following President Kagame's visit to Barbados earlier this year, Prime Minister Mottley will be in Rwanda to further the bilateral ties between the two Caribbean islands. Jean-Claude Musabyimana, the new Minister of Local Government, replaces Jean-Marie Vianney Gatabazi. This Thursday, the Prime Minister's office issued a statement announcing his appointment by President Paul Kagame. Since March 2021, Gatabazi Jean-Marie Vianney, who previously held the position of Governor of the Northern Province and Member of Parliament, has led the Ministry of Local Government, Minalog. He was replaced by Jean-Claude Musabyimana, who has been serving as the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources, Minagri. Musabyimana, an agriculture hydrology engineer, also previously served as the Permanent Secretary in the former Ministry of Lands and Forestry. He has over 15 years of experience working as a lecturer and the local government administrator. Musabyimana has also formerly served as a government of Northern Province and Mayor of Musanze District. The rate of inflation in Rwanda rises by 20.1%. The urban CPI is calculated based on approximately 16,022 products in 12 urban centers of Rwanda. Food and non-alcoholic beverage costs have skyrocketed, which is mostly to blame for the increase. Due to COVID-19's consequences, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and low agricultural production, prices have continued to rise. Food and non-alcoholic drinks climbed by 5.3% monthly and by 39.7% annually in October 2022. Housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels also saw annual increases of 8.9% and monthly increase of 1.3%. According to National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda, transport increased by 13.6% on annual basis and decreased by 0.4% on monthly basis. Restaurants and hotels increased by 18.6% on annual change and increased by 0.9% on monthly basis. The data also showed the local products increased by 20.1% on annual change and increased by 3.4% on monthly basis, while prices of the important products increased by 20% on annual basis and increased by 0.6% on a monthly basis. Meanwhile, prices of energy increased by 22.3% on annual change and increased by 2.4% on a monthly basis. The bold acts from African kids are required to realize their potential. The youth from across the continent, under the umbrella organization One Campaign, are advocating for a raft of urgent and bold policy action to tap into their potential towards building a better and prosperous Africa. The call comes off the heels of the highly anticipated African Union Summit on Industrialization and Economic Diversification stated for this month in Niger. This also comes at a time Africa is recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic and grappling with aftershocks from global economic and political events. With its booming young population, Africa's youth account for 60% people who are jobless. The continent hence needs to create about 15 million new decent jobs yearly. It was also emphasized that national policies should include well-targeted tax incentives to draw investors and promote job growth, avail policy reforms to lower tariffs on the importation of necessary machinery and equipment that is not locally produced, and establish equity and guarantee funds at the national level to reduce investment risk in startups. The Member of Parliament Mukabarisa pokes holes in provision on national park abolition. Member of Parliament Germaine Mukabarisa said that the article providing for a public institution in charge of management and development of national parks and natural reserves to request their declassification in vague and might weaken conservation efforts. She said this yesterday as the Chamber of Deputies was voting on the bill governing national parks and natural reserves. The law houses passed this bill on the same day. A national park or national reserve, as well as its buffer zone, may be declassified upon request to the minister in charge of national parks and natural reserves. As per Article 17 of the bill, the authority is a public institution responsible for managing and developing national parks and natural reserves. It also stipulates that a national park and a state-owned natural reserve and its buffer zone may be declassified by ministerial order. This article, according to Member of the Parliament Mukabarisa, who has a master's degree in international economics and business law, is vague and should at least provide the basis for their abolition. We'll be back with economic news.
Economic news is a regular feature on Radio Imanzi.
Welcome back. This is the economic news. The trading session recorded a turnover of 51,184 Rwandan francs from 312,600 shares traded in 5 deals on the equities market and 5,168,000 worth of bonds traded in 2 deals on the fixed income market. Equities counter closed as follow. Bank of Kigali at 272 Rwandan francs, Simirwa at 120 Rwandan francs, MTN Rwanda at 174 Rwandan francs, Equity at 440 Rwandan francs, Kenya Commercial Bank at 370 Rwandan francs, National Media Group at 1,200 Rwandan francs, Uchumi Supermarket Limited at 104 Rwandan francs, and R&H Buffalo at 520 Rwandan francs. The exchange rate as of today, 10th November 2022, the United States dollar was buying 1,041 Rwandan francs and was selling at 1,062 Rwandan francs. The euro, the buying price was 1,045 Rwandan francs and the selling price was 1,066 Rwandan francs. The British pound the buying price was 1,188 Rwandan francs, and the selling price was 1,212 Rwandan francs. The Kenyan shilling, the buying price was 8.5 Rwandan francs, and the selling price was 8.7 Rwandan francs. The Tanzanian shilling buying price was 0.44 Rwandan francs, and the selling price was 0.45 Rwandan francs. The Ugandan shilling buying price was 0.27 Rwandan francs, and the selling price was 0.28 Rwandan francs. Burundian shilling, the buying price was 0.50 Rwandan francs, and the selling price was 0.51 Rwandan francs. We'll be back with international news.
Some items of international news on Radio Imanzi.
Kenyan Foreign Minister to visit Rwanda on Friday. Alfred Mutua, Kenya's Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, will visit Rwanda on Friday, November 11th. Without divulging details, the Kenyan High Commission to Rwanda said that he is coming on a courtesy call aimed at seeking ways to further the country's relations. Alfred Mutua was named Kenya's Foreign Secretary late September when President William Ruto was appointing the new cabinet. His visit to Rwanda is the first he has had abroad since taking office. Kenya has been leading discussions on stability and security in the DR Congo in the interim. Earlier this year, a 6-day consultative discussion on peace and security in the DR Congo was held in Nairobi, Kenya. Uhuru Kenyatta, the former president of Kenya, reaffirmed the importance of peace in the DR Congo and the region and promised support in the effort to bring about peace. Kenya is also to spend $37 million on sending forces to Congo. Kenya's parliament has approved the deployment of nearly 1,000 troops for a new regional force in eastern Congo amid questions about the $37 million cost for the first 6 months of the mission. A parliament committee report says the money will be spent on equipment, allowances, and operations for more than 900 troops joining the East African Community Regional Force that will support Congolese forces against armed groups. Last Monday, Kenyan President William Ruto described the mission as vital and critical for regional security. Armed group violence in eastern Congo has sparked a diplomatic crisis between the country and its neighbor Rwanda, which both accuse the other of supporting particularly organizations. The main city in eastern Congo, Goma, will serve as the base for the Kenyan army. A Kenyan commander is in charge of the regional force, which was chosen by chiefs of state in June, and this will include 2 battalions from Uganda, 2 from Burundi, and 1 from South Sudan. South Africa public sector workers strike over wage demands. Thousands of public servants began a one-day strike in South Africa today over wage demands. The dispute over public servant salaries flared up after Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi announced last week that he would increase salaries by 3%, while the unions were demanding 6.5%. Strikers in the health, immigration, and police sector kept picket lines during the daytime hours in the vicinity of Pretoria's core government buildings. South Africa's economy has already been hit hard by several weeks of strikes in the railways and port services, which has affected mineral and fresh fruit exports. The Ebola epicenter in Uganda is surrounded by courage and fear. The reappearance of the virus after 3 years has sparked fear in Uganda, with cases now reported in the capital Kampala as the high contagious disease makes its way through the country of 47 million people. In all, 53 people have died, including children, out of more than 135 cases, according to the latest Ugandan Health Ministry figures. In Kasazi B village, everyone is afraid. They're saying Ebola is not airborne. It is spread through bodily fluids, with common symptoms being fever, vomiting, bleeding, and diarrhea. But misinformation poses a major challenge. In some cases, victims' relatives have exhumed their bodies after medically supervised barriers to perform traditional rituals, triggering a spike in infections. World Health Organization chief decrees Tigray aid blockade amid ceasefire. Following the agreement on a ceasefire, the World Health Organization called for major entry of food and medication into Ethiopia's Tigray area, claiming that much needed help had not yet been permitted in. After 2 years of deadly conflict and with access to the area being severely constrained, the World Health Organization stated that the people of Tigray needed urgent assistance. Ethiopia's northernmost area has entered a serious humanitarian crisis as a result of the battle between government forces and Tigrayan rebels, with just a trickle of aid making it through. The head of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom, praised the historic ceasefire struck last Wednesday, but cautioned that a week had passed and nothing is happening in terms of food, aid, or medicine. Many preventable diseases are killing people, and a lot of people are starving to death. He insisted that civilians need food and medication, even when there is conflict. It can't be a requirement. Vladimir Putin will not be attending the G20 summit, according to the Russian embassy. Russian President Vladimir Putin will not attend in person a summit of leaders from the group of 20 nations in Bali next week. The president will be represented by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, said Yulia Tomskaya, the chief of protocol at the embassy. Tomskaya added that Putin is still deciding if he will join one of the meetings virtually. Vladimir Putin's decision not to attend the G20 summit in person saves him the embarrassment of being confronted or shunned by other world leaders over Russia's invasion in Ukraine. The meeting will take place just days after the Kremlin announced Russian forces would retreat from a large swathe of Kherson, one of 4 Ukrainian regions Putin previously said Russia planned to annex in violation of international law. Germany blocks sales of chip factory to China over security fears. The German government has blocked the sale of one of its semiconductor factories to a Chinese-owned tech company because of security concerns. Germany's economic ministry said in a statement that it had prohibited Elmos Semiconductor, which makes chips for the automotive industry, from selling its factory in Dortmund to Silex, a Swedish subsidiary of China's Sai Microelectronics. The ministry said in a statement that the decision had been taken because the acquisition would have endangered the public order and safety of Germany. Silex announced in December that it had signed an agreement with Elmos to buy the factory for 85 million euros, and Elmos said in a statement that both companies regretted the government's decision. The planned deal had rattled German authorities, concerned that Chinese investment in its critical infrastructure could compromise its intellectual property and leave it exposed to political pressure from Beijing. With that, we come to the end of the program. Let us backtrack to the headlines. President Paul Kagame received Barbados Prime Minister in Rwanda. He also appointed a new Minister of Local Government. Rwanda's inflation increases by 20.1%. Kenya will spend $37 million on sending forces to Congo. His Excellency Vladimir Putin will not be attending the G20 summit in person. This was Alvin Ungari. Thank you for staying with us. Stay tuned at the frequency for more programs. Have a wonderful night.